Welcome to Marketing Demystified, the podcast that connects the dots for business leaders to drive revenue through effective marketing strategy. We chat with marketing experts on different topics that will help you ramp up your revenue. We stream live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platforms. Marketing Demystified, the podcast, is presented to you by GrowGetter, your partner in growth marketing. And here's today.
Hello, everyone. Are you ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered with actionable tips to transform your marketing game? You're in the right place. Welcome to Marketing Demystified. I'm your host, Jenn Mancusi, CEO and co-founder of GrowGetter, your growth marketing partner. On today's episode of Marketing Demystified, I am thrilled to welcome Neil Schaefer, a globally recognized digital marketing expert who's been helping businesses leverage social media for over 16 years. As the author of multiple best-selling books, including The Age of Influence and Maximizing LinkedIn for Business Growth, Neil serves as a fractional CMO for numerous companies and teaches at prestigious institutions like UCLA Extension and Rutgers Business School. Neil brings a unique global perspective to digital marketing, having helped entrepreneurs and businesses worldwide grow through strategic use of social media, content, and influencer marketing. Welcome to the show, Neil.
Jen, I'm psyched to be here. Let's get going.
Super excited to have you on the show. That was a big intro. You've got a lot to live up to, but I know you can do it. So let's just jump right in.
Awesome.
So in your book, you talk about building a magnetic LinkedIn profile or page. What are some of the key elements that transform a basic profile or page on LinkedIn into one that is magnetic and attracts opportunities?
Yeah, great question. Well, LinkedIn is, when you look at all the different social media sites that are out there, LinkedIn over the past decade has continued to be what I would say steady Eddie, continues to be a major force and the leading social networking platform for professionals, for businesses. And these days, it's become a very engaging place as well. While other sites' engagement seems to go down, LinkedIn, I think a lot of us feel that we get a lot of likes and comments on our posts. But LinkedIn should be more than that. It really is the place where you show your personal brand, the place where you do business. And I like to say that all roads lead back to your profile. So when you show up in search, someone clicks through and goes to your profile. When you comment or like and someone sees your name and goes to your profile, or they do a search for you on the internet, and inevitably, unless you have a personal website like some of us in marketing do, the first thing they see is your LinkedIn profile and go there. You really want to not only attract more and more people there, but when people come, you want to make sure they stay, they consume your content, and ideally, you take them on a journey towards the next step. So, a lot of you listening, maybe watching, you hopefully already have a LinkedIn profile. But LinkedIn has changed over the years. And if you haven't, looked at it or revised it over the last few years or even several months, you miss out on some of the key functionality that they've added over time. I'd say, one way to make it more magnetic, and if we just look at a LinkedIn profile from the very top, is there is this cover image that you can have above your face, above your headline. And similar to Facebook, which also gives you the ability to have a cover image, not every social networking site does, that really gives you a chance to visually set the stage for what you are about. The idea of having a magnetic profile is all about attracting the right person. So setting the stage with the right visual will create the story that you want to tell them so that they keep reading. I'll give you an example. My nephew he graduated from university in civil engineering, but he really wanted to go in for a variety of reasons into hydroponic farming, or better known as vertical farming. So we decided for his cover image, he should have a stock photo of what a vertical farm looks like. So immediately when someone goes to his page, they know that he has an interest in vertical farming. And therefore, if someone is looking to hire someone or do business with some entity in vertical farming, they have obviously found the right person. So the visual begins with the cover image. It doesn't stop there. Obviously, you have a profile photo, which I think should just be clean and professional and nothing fancy. But you also have other visual areas as you keep scrolling down. One of them is the featured section. Normally, this is going to be seen after your about section, or sometimes even before your about section. you might see this featured section on some profiles. If you go to my profile, you'll see it there. But a featured section allows you to embed visuals in your profile and lead people to places where you want to take them. So if you were to see my profile, I have 3 featured images. One is for my newsletter, one is for a free ebook about LinkedIn that connects to a landing page, another is to a Who is Neil Schaefer YouTube video that I have. So once again, the images will help bring people to your page and make them stay there, but they also serve the purpose of branding and leading people on a call to action. The other part of magnetism outside of the visual is then the textual, right? So we know, and I'm sure you've all heard this before, LinkedIn is also a search engine, and really making sure you have those keywords, but not just the right keywords. That professional headline at the very, very top of your profile becomes critical, because if someone finds you on a search or someone sees your headline attached to a post, they are going to judge whether or not they want to visit your profile or contact you, first of all, based on that headline. So, there's a lot of cheesy formulas for headlines out there. Some people just stuff a lot of keywords in there. You're really speaking to your target customer, your target prospect, your target employer, whoever your target is, and you want to make it sound human, natural, sprinkling in the keywords, but also making it clear what you're about and how you help people. Sometimes you can overdo it. For instance, when you get a LinkedIn connection request, you'll see what other people's professional headlines are of the people that make the request. So when I see a request from someone that has a headline that says, I help consultants, automate their business, or when it's very, very clear that you're being targeted, I tend to avoid those people, right? So you don't want to get too targeted, too salesy. This is social media, this is social networking, but by doing it in the right way, you will attract the right people, and those keywords will ensure that you show up in the right searches. And I know I've talked for a while here. I'll just add one more. I'm just going over those key elements. The last one I would add, obviously, is the about section. So they find you in search, in a comment from the web. They see your cover image, check. They scroll down, they see your professional photo, they see your professional headline, check. The next thing they probably see is the about section and then the featured section. The about section is really, if you were going to meet someone for the first time, how would you introduce yourself? So I always recommend the first person, you want to make it welcome, inviting. And from there, this is where you really want to have some storytelling. I mean, tell your story. What is it that you do? Why do you do it? What's different about you, in as natural of a way as possible? And these elements alone, I believe, are the most strategic elements. There's more that we can go into, but these are things that will help really, attract the right people. And when the right people come, you'll be able to, hold their hand and take them on that journey wherever you want to lead them.
Yeah, that's such a great overview of those different areas and sections. And you said when you started to talk that LinkedIn's changed a lot over the years. And I think your words were LinkedIn's gotten a lot more engaging. And so, how we show up on the platform does have to be a little bit more engaging and magnetic, like you say, to get people to actually engage with you and have a conversation with you.
Yeah, I think back in the day, and it's funny because I just came back from a business trip in Japan, and they've always been really behind on LinkedIn. Now it's become a little bit more popular, but they're still in 2008 mode. Oh, people just go to LinkedIn to look for a new job, right? I think we're way beyond that. And what's happened over time, LinkedIn always had a lot of engagement, but it was sort of hidden in LinkedIn groups. LinkedIn used to have something called LinkedIn Answers. And so there were people engaging, but just in different areas. And professionals didn't really have a culture of publishing content on LinkedIn. We might publish content on Facebook or elsewhere, but LinkedIn was just, it's really, I'm here to do business. But over time, we've seen more and more people post content, and we know that those that post content regularly reap the benefits. They're seen more in the feed. I always like to say, only the top 1% of users are actually publishing consistently. So now with all this great content in the feed, there is a lot more engagement to be had, a lot more connections to be made, a lot more mind share to be bought with your network. So that's really, the profile is a static entity. Maybe you come back to it once every month, once every quarter, just to make sure it's up to date. Do you have anything you'd like to, replace in the feature? Do you have a new photo shot or a new image you want to put in the cover image? But really, the dynamic part of LinkedIn is in the posting and obviously the engaging of other people in your newsfeed.
Yeah. And how do you think about that sort of content creation, the posting, the engagement, all of those things, or even profile creation for a company page versus your individual profile page? Like, why should business leaders and owners care about their own personal page, not just their, company presence?
Yeah, the company page is critical because the company page, especially if you're hiring employees, that's where they're going to go to. So, for a minimum of social proof, right? If you're an established company, you must have a company page. You must flesh it out. You must, at a minimum, publish some content there so that people have something to look at. I'd be suspicious of companies that have, a few hundred employees yet have never published on their company page. I sort of wonder, is this company okay, right? So for social proof, just like a Facebook page or an Instagram profile, you'll want to publish there. But that being said, you will never get the type of engagement that a person can get. And this is the same for LinkedIn as it is for any other, social media network, that people engage with people, not with companies. And I know that there are companies like OpenAI, if they publish an update to ChatGPT, yes, they're going to get a lot of engagement. Maybe IBM when they publish a new white paper. So there are some companies that have such a huge scale and huge influence in their industry, they will get that engagement on LinkedIn. So the bigger the company, the greater the chance. If only 0.1% of your followers engage with you, it's still a large number. But for most small businesses, it's going to be really hard. And this is where really the individual LinkedIn profile shines. And, we can talk a little bit more about employee advocacy or employee engagement. These are mainly HR concepts that have been around for a while. But the whole idea is that if I was the CEO of a small business and I had 10, 20, 50 employees that were on LinkedIn, I would want them to be posting content about our company, right? Obviously, this can't be forced. They have to want to do it. They have to like to do it. So you need to have a conversation and understand what's the best way to encourage them to do that, or maybe include them in your content creation process, or have events to make it easy for them to post about. But I think that's really where the magic is compared to your company page. If you get 5 or 10 employees that post regularly, that have a decent network, and often this starts with salespeople who are often well connected, this can really give a lot of visibility to your company, and when done right, to your company's content as well. So, on a Facebook, on an Instagram, on other platforms, I don't think it's possible, but because so many people treat LinkedIn as a professional network and therefore they want to help, often their employer, this is really the only network where I think it can happen. And when it does happen, it's really magical, the effect it can have.
Yeah. And I want to talk more about employee engagement, and maybe I'll bookmark it for later because I want to talk about the LinkedIn algorithm as well. But before we get into that, so don't let me forget, I want to talk more about that. But before we get into that, I'm curious, like, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen companies make when working on LinkedIn, or when publishing content, or just maybe the approach as a whole, that make it less effective, because there's a lot of split opinions out there about how effective LinkedIn is. I hear a lot of people say LinkedIn doesn't do anything for us, or it's the best thing since sliced bread. Obviously, it depends on your approach. So what are some of the mistakes that people can avoid?
Yeah. The A word algorithm is an interesting one because it is always changing. No one owns it. When, there's a time when LinkedIn polls gets really active, and you see LinkedIn polls of your feed and everybody publishes a LinkedIn poll, and then LinkedIn decides, you know what, there's too many polls in the feed. So at the end of the day, and I tell this for every social network, worry less about the algorithm and worry more about the quality of your content and actually engaging with other people. Those are really the key things, right? If you engage with other people, the chances are they're going to engage more with your content. And if it's really quality content, right, the chances are greater that you're going to get more engagement from it, averagely speaking. So, that's like the first thing that I want to say. Mistakes I see, I think, based on what I just said, not engaging with others is a big mistake. I think for company pages, it's a little bit hard to do, to engage with others as a company page, although it is possible. But for people, definitely, LinkedIn does not want people that just come and publish content and leave. They want you to stay on the platform. They want you to be part of the community and engage with others as well. So that's definitely one of the mistakes. The other is, the content quality. It's we're just going to publish the same thing on a LinkedIn, on a Facebook, on a Twitter, on an Instagram, when LinkedIn is very unique in its demographic. And often, and I've podcasted about this before, that we schedule things in advance, right? And then by the time we publish them, they're stale. Or maybe a mistake is overuse of AI to create content that doesn't really speak to people, right? It has no emotion. So focusing on the content quality, and just the great thing is look in your feed for content that gets a lot of engagement, right? Um, Generally speaking, although there are people that try to hack the algorithm to try to get that engagement, generally speaking, that is representative of content that is quality. And the great thing about social media is you can go to your competitors' company pages, you can go to competitor profiles, look at what they're posting, right? Go to their activity area, and you could actually look at all their posts and see how much engagement they're getting. So doing a little bit of competitive research, I think, would also be really beneficial. The other part that I like to focus on for LinkedIn that I think is really critical is, and I hinted at it when I talked about LinkedIn polls, is understanding the different formats. So if you have just been publishing link posts, hoping to generate traffic from LinkedIn, those days are long over. And it was about 9 months ago when LinkedIn really reduced the size of that thumbnail image that comes from the link. So it gets almost no visibility in the news feed, and for a reason. LinkedIn wants to keep people on the platform, right? So now we talk about, well, what are the things outside of link-based content that you can publish? So you begin to not see LinkedIn as a way to generate traffic, which we all want, but you really want to take what I call a link in bio approach, right? On Instagram, when you publish a post, you do not have a link in every post, but if the content is good enough and relevant enough, people will go to your link in bio, right? And this is the same thing, the same approach that I recommend you take for LinkedIn. It's not about putting a link in every post. It's about offering value in each post. It's about keeping people on the platform, which LinkedIn wants, which will help you get more engagement and help you become better friends with the algorithm. So it could be a text only post. But I think the ones that do better have visuals, either a single photo, a gallery of photos, or what they call a carousel type of post, which is a PDF, often a square PDF, 4 to 10 page PDF that can get engagement when you show data or a story or what have you. We also have video, right? And we can't ignore that LinkedIn has been encouraging more and more video. A live stream is another type of video, but just for pure short form video, the LinkedIn app now has a dedicated video tab. And we know anecdotally, some people, when they get featured there, literally get hundreds of thousands of views. And then we have the newsletter. And I'm finding when I look at my analytics, the newsletter continues to get more impressions right now, might change, a month from now, but right now it continues to get the most impressions out of all these different content mediums, probably because I have a few thousand subscribers. But nevertheless, it's understanding that there are different content formats. And in order to understand where you're going to get the most engagement, what type of reader, what type of content your followers, your network consumes, you really need to experiment with all these different content types and try to find the ones that are giving you the most bang for the buck. And this is something, I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but I think it's something that a lot of companies take for granted. And it's because of the social media scheduler culture, right? When you do the social media scheduling and you don't spend enough time in the network, you don't see LinkedIn polls because you can't create them in a social media scheduler. You don't see the carousel PDFs because you can't create them in a social media scheduler. You don't see the newsletters because you can't create them in a social media scheduler. By weeding yourself off of a social media scheduler for as long as you can and actually spending more time in LinkedIn and posting in LinkedIn where you can tag people and do things that you can't do in a social media scheduler, that becomes the key, I think, to getting a lot more engagement and a lot more success in the platform. So I know I weaved a few different digital threads in that comment, but it's not one quick answer, but it's understanding. I talk in digital threads about becoming friends with the algorithm. The algorithm's not your enemy; it wants to serve the right content to the right people. So allow it to do that with quality content and a variety of formats to match everyone's needs.
Yeah. And I think it's really, I've got so many thoughts and more questions. It's really tough to stay on top of, like you were saying, polls are working really well today, and then all of a sudden they're ratcheting them back, and staying on top of what's happening with the algorithm is really hard. And we do spend a lot of time talking about what the algorithm likes and what it doesn't like and the links, and it's going to deprioritize that or the personal, but it's constantly changing, so it's really difficult to stay on top of it. So I mean, I guess maybe the answer is simple, that you just have to be watching your engagement and seeing what works and what doesn't, and be also flexible enough to move away from. So LinkedIn is also sunsetting features constantly.
Yep.
It's constantly improving the platform, which can be really challenging if all of your strategy is, bent on getting a, top contributor badge, and then they get rid of those, right? Then what do you do,
Sorry for
right?
laughing. Yeah, I mean, as someone who published this book, Maximizing LinkedIn for Business Growth, back in September, and then seeing all the changes and wanting to revise it and make it, enhance it with more content, that was one of them that in September was really hot. And I figured out how to get a top contributor badge in a week. And then it's like, oh, by the way, we're sort of, doing away with this. So I think, and it's the same with every platform, the data will lead you to the answer, but it's understanding the way that algorithms work in general, right? Content format is a big play. We know this with Instagram, right? Reels over images, carousels over images. So but LinkedIn actually offers more formats than any other network. Maybe Facebook comes close, but or maybe Twitter. Well, we don't even talk about Twitter these days because it's not social media. But nevertheless, LinkedIn has all these formats. So if you were to still do a poll once a month, like I noticed that, you know what? I'm starting to get a little bit more engagement for my link-based content now that I don't post as much of it. So it's really having a very dynamic, liquid approach of taking it 1 month at a time, looking at your analytics from the previous month and deciding what content formats you want to publish in. And if you have a lot of content, if you follow my advice in Digital Threads and you build a library of content, and with the power of a ChatGPT, you can repurpose your own voice, your own content into so many different formats now. That should not be, it is easier to do now than it ever has been, but you need to be able to pivot and understand and really believe in that data and be able to pivot, pretty frequently. And I think, you and I, Jen, as marketers, we're very much used to this, but maybe older organizations or, a lot of marketers, the dream is to have everything on autopilot, right? I got my RSS feed, I got my ping.fm, and it all just flows and it frees up my time for other things. But, social media, in the framework that I put in Digital Threads, social media is really the place not to promote yourself or business, but to make connection with other people, right? And develop relationships. And you can't automate that. You got to be in the mud. You got to be there where other people are. You got to be watching what's going on, right? Watching the room, bumping into people, introducing yourself. And that's why of all the networks, LinkedIn really is the one where you want to be as manual in terms of managing it. For TikTok or for Instagram, it's maybe the format is singular, but the content might be different. The angle, the perspective, or the topic, right? But with LinkedIn, I would definitely first start with the format, right? Topic is also important, but if you can nail the format, that alone can really help, double, triple, quadruple your impressions and engagement over the course of a month if you follow these instructions, because I've seen it happen with my own profile.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder what your perspective is on, is there a balance there? Or do you feel strongly that like you've got to be in the platform in the moment and posting your content when it's relevant right now and engaging with people? Like, is there space for, I mean, sometimes I have an idea for a post and, I'm a big believer, like if you think of something, just post it, right? There's no, don't have to craft it and let's see what happens. But sometimes I don't want to, I've got two ideas. And so I schedule one for the next day and post it. Or there's other stuff I feel is evergreen content, maybe more so for company page that, I can schedule out. Like, is there a balance so that you are kind of still having a consistent drumbeat of content out there, but also engaging in the moment? Or are you like, hey, we need to be sort of in there in the day, in the moment, engaging, and that's really the only way to do it?
Well, I mean, certainly, you can plan posts out for a little bit.
Yeah.
For a week or two, I think it's totally okay. I think when you plan it out for a few months,
Mm,
is when we get into the issue, because if you don't look in the analytics, you might be missing out on opportunities. And also, the world changes, right?
yeah.
With the new president, it seems like the world's changing literally every day.
Mhm.
So understanding those trends as well, what I would do, Jen, is you can add content to drafts, even within LinkedIn or in a scheduler, should you still wish to use one. You can have content ready to go And then when you feel like you're ready to publish content, go into your drafts and find the one that you think is most appropriate and publish that, rather than having everything already pre-automated on a drip feed, right? So I think it's totally okay to, I went a little bit extreme saying, ditch the scheduler. It's okay to schedule to some extent. A lot of it you can do on LinkedIn, but like a newsletter is something that if you really want to do, you want to maintain a minimum frequency of once a week, right? So that's where, I would recommend, once a week to try out these different content formats for a month until you find what works. And yes, it requires preparation, right? You're not just going to go, oh, I think I'm going to create a poll today, right? So you have these ideas, you have these topics that are important to in your content strategy, to your business, things that come up in client meetings or what have you. So you should always have that database of content that's ready to go, right? Or that is in the midst of creation, or ideas that you want to develop. And maybe you will develop those in the moment. But I just think it is a different way of thinking. And I would say the same thing for, an Instagram or TikTok. Yes, you need to create short form videos in advance. But in terms of the topics, right? Just understanding, you know what? We should have something on this topic that's trendy right now. We might have stuff scheduled out for a few weeks, but we should really today focus on creating something around this topic and while it's hot. So it's really just being able to mix the two and being a little bit more dynamic with your conversations and your content in social media.
Yeah, for sure. Another tip too, as you were talking about, sort of looking to see what other people are posting about, what's getting engagement, and like for ideas and inspiration. One thing that sometimes can work really well is if you see a topic that is trending and people's posts are getting a lot of visibility, when you comment your perspective on and join other people's conversations, maybe I'm going to comment and nobody's going to care about it and it falls to the bottom of a list of 100 comments. But if you have a perspective that people engage with that, well, maybe that's something you should be posting more about, right? There's so many great ways to identify, what you should be talking a little bit more about. And maybe you want to make a video about that or something like that.
Yeah, and if you cut and paste your comments and put them in the ChatGPT, you can now create your own post based on your own thoughts on the subject, right? So you're absolutely right. Comments are a great way. Once you follow people, influencers, people in your industry, competitors, you start commenting on things that get a lot of engagement, and you get engagement. Those are great signals that is a topic that you might want to cover. In the SEO world, we can do keyword research, right? But for social media, you need to be a little bit more smarter. It's not one global search engine. It's the search engine that relates to the content that your followers, your target audience are following. And the only way to really know about that, you could use some pretty sophisticated social listening tools and filters, what have you. But the easier way to do it is just, keep track of 10 or 15 or 20 people that are key to your industry, not even daily, just once a week, just, go in and see what they're talking about, see what's getting a lot of engagement. And that'll give you some really, really good advice as to what, if you haven't been talking about lately, something you might want to.
Yeah. Well, and just to that point of, going back to LinkedIn being a search engine and having a bit of a keyword approach to your profile and your content, what do you think about hashtags on LinkedIn? I know that's kind of a split subject because it maybe is connected to the algorithm and how things are changing. Like, is it worthwhile to have a hashtag strategy as part of your content?
Yeah, it's funny. I'll give you an example. It's not a hashtag example, but YouTube has always had tags that you can add at the bottom. But now they don't even show the tag section anymore. You have to sort of like click a more because the tags aren't important anymore. In other words, the algorithm is so smart that it can figure out what your content's about. That being said, when I was on a phone call with people from Meta talking about Instagram recently, they still say, hey, you still want to have 3 to 5 hashtags just to make sure the algorithm knows what you're talking about. If it's business related, but you don't say the word business, then you might want to add, hashtag business. So I say on LinkedIn, they can't hurt. But remember, we had something called creator mode. And I feel sorry, I still get tons of hits on my YouTube video on what is creator mode when it no longer exists. But we used to have the ability to add hashtags to our profile if we were on creator mode, which we no longer have. So that is just a hint that, the power or the value of the hashtag is not nearly as much as it used to be. But if you want to add 3 hashtags at the end of your post, go for it. I wouldn't add more than that. More than 3 to 5. If you add more than that, it might be considered sort of spammy. And it also just looks bad. I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, but even Elon has said, hey, hashtags on Twitter just look bad. Stop using them. There's a reason that Threads only allows you to have one hashtag. So clearly with the the prevalence of video instead of text in terms of social media content, but also just the way the algorithms have gotten smarter. And with AI, the need for hashtags is just not nearly as it used to be. So you know what? If you don't want to put a hashtag in your LinkedIn post, I don't think it's going to harm your ability to get visibility for that content today.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Like focus more on it being good quality content that people want to
Exactly.
engage with, and you don't have to worry as much about the hashtags for sure.
Precisely.
I want to circle back to the employee engagement topic. And I think some of it is a little bit related to the algorithm conversation as well. Like, what are some tips that you have for, you know, I guess different ways to increase engagement? I mean, on the content itself. Like, if I was going to be talking to a group of, sales team members for a company and say, hey, these are the best ways to engage with the content to increase visibility. Can you talk a little bit about that, and the difference between commenting or sharing or liking or posting a native post, and what you would recommend for those, for getting your employees involved?
Yeah, well, this is going to break the law right now, according to our current president. But this is where you actually want to be inclusive. And the reason is, and when I talk about inclusivity, it's about including your employees in your marketing, in your content, make them feel part of it, right? And I think in the early days of employee advocacy, which is now, I think it really started getting going and tools emerged back in 2012, 13. It was all about, hey, the marketing team will create this content, all you need to do is authorize us and we'll just automatically publish to your profile.
Mhm.
And people, that did not last very long, right? People did not want these automated posts on their profile.
Yeah.
So it's really about creating the content that your employees would want to share. I would absolutely start with your sales team. And hey, are there questions you're being asked that we don't have content for? That's a great place to start, right? But it's also, interviewing your employees, asking them if they want to contribute a comment, taking photos at internal events, asking for their permission to be part of it. Or if they have a great photo they'd like to contribute about working at your company, or maybe something about where your company's located, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be directly related to your product. It can be indirectly related. I would welcome those people, right? And it really becomes part of this employee for life mentality. I get hired to go to companies to train employees on personal branding, right?
Mhm.
Companies want their employees to become better branded because it will help them do their work better, and indirectly it makes the company look better as well. And maybe they go somewhere else at some time, but they're always going to remember the company that invested in them. So, making your content more inclusive together with your employees, at least as far as social media goes, your search engine optimization content might be different. But as far as LinkedIn goes, making them as part of the content as possible will naturally lead to more engagement. It's the same thing about user generated content, right? This is what we call employee generated content, but it will always lead to more engagement naturally, organically from your employees.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that approach. I think it's great to, uh, to have people contribute, right, and be a part of the creation. And it does make you want to participate a little bit more, in the sharing and amplification of that content. I remember I don't know, fairly early in my career and doing a trial for one of those employee
Advocacy tools. Yep.
advocacy tools, and we did maybe like a 30-day pilot, and there were very few people who were comfortable with giving us full access to post on their behalf under their name, a series of content that we created for them. So it was a great idea in theory, I guess, but people want to have their own voice and really should have their own voice. Um,
Yeah. And
but
guess what? The people that were posting, you go to their profiles, it was just all automated posts. I mean, how
yeah.
much engagement's that going to get, right? So that's the other issue. When you look at social media and people as a numbers game, and I think a lot of the employee advocacy tools did, because hey, get 1% of your employees to share, you'll get 10% more clicks. But these are people, right? And do those clicks have any meaning? Do the impressions, the posting have any meaning in the grand scale of things? They probably don't.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and how do you help people who want to participate and want to engage, but are kind of like, we hear the question all the time, like, well, I don't really know what to say, or I don't really like, can you help me? Right. The flip side of that, where, you know, I want to engage with the company content, or I want to post on the company's behalf, but I need help. I don't know what to do. What advice do you give for those people?
Yeah, so this is also part of that training when I'm called in, but what a lot of companies do is they might have like a Friday lunch and learn. So come in every Friday, we'll serve lunch and we'll help you, we'll help you either create the content or through interviewing you recommend some comment that might be relevant to you, right? And I think if you're an employee trying to figure this out, I mean, go into your company's page, your homepage, or look at what they posted on their company page. Is there anything that you'd want to share with your network? Anything that resonates with you? I think that's really where you start. When it comes to content creation, what are your passions and hobbies? And is there any intersection of those passions and hobbies with what you do at the company? Or, what are you proud of what you do? Or did you have an interaction? Obviously, you can't bring in customer names and things that are protected by an NDA, but you can tell stories, right? I mean, when you talk to your friends about your work, what do you say? So I think that there's a lot of ideas, and some people, and I know in the early days of social media, there were people that were fired and got their wrist slapped by saying things they shouldn't say. So you always want to, at the beginning at least, make sure that what you want to talk about is okay. Most of the time, it is, especially today. But yeah, that is where I would start on sort of this, work with the people that are in charge of marketing or employee advocacy or employee engagement. Start with posts that are already public. Anything that's already on the internet that your company has shared is public that you can share as well and add your own spin. But outside of that, once again, make it natural. How do you describe what you do to your friends, to your family, hobbies, passions? And even if it's just publishing something once a month, I mean, any article that you can, or any image or anything you can publish is going to help your company. We're not talking about doing this on a daily basis, but once a month, if you can come up with something, if I am a company, I'm really happy. And hopefully it adds value to you and to your network as well, because they get to know a little bit more about you, what you do, and indirectly your company.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I want to talk a little bit more about AI, which has come up a bit organically in this conversation. Obviously, there's a right way and a wrong way to leverage these great tools that are in our toolkit. What are some of the do's and don'ts that you would recommend in terms of working an AI content generator? I don't want to call it that even, into your workflow?
Yeah, well, you first have to have a defined workflow, right? So,
True.
do you have a content creation workflow? And many companies, especially small businesses, don't really have it defined. But if you can define it, and I have a dedicated chapter of this in Digital Threads, but if you can define it, then it's about mapping where does it make sense to have AI play a role. And I think some of the bigger areas that are universal, I mean, the biggest area is probably the process itself, right? What do you do every day in your job? What can AI simplify? And I think a lot of marketers immediately turn to the generative AI of being able to create a blog post like that. But there's a lot of different areas where AI can really help you. And when we map AI to our processes, ideation is obviously one really, really impactful area, right? What am I going to write about today? What title should I put on this? And give me 10 ideas. In terms of idea generation, it is infinite, it is smart, and that is by far the way that most businesses, I'm sure, are using AI, at least today, and at least you should be using it there as well. When it comes to the actual creation of content, when we start with the idea, we need to flesh out the content, right? So yes, AI can give you outlines, bullet point outlines. It could give you scripts to work off of, and I would say, if you are not a natural content creator, having like something to start with versus a blank slate is going to help you accelerate the process. You might go through there and say, you know what, this makes no sense, or this is just not true, right? So
Mhm.
you're not going to take everything it gives you for what it is. You're going to use it as a diving board of sorts to jump off of, to be able to create your own content, to help accelerate the creation of your own content. Some of you may not even need that, right? But I will say, even myself, and I am a content creator and a blogger, I may say, I want to write a blog post about a subject. This is my current outline. These are some top ranking posts for this same keyword phrase. What am I missing? Right? What are the gaps? And it'll help find gaps. And you may want to cover those gaps. You may not want to cover those gaps. But once again, there's so many areas where AI can help you. And none of these is we're just gonna, ask AI for content and then publish as is. I would absolutely never recommend you do that. But if you already have content, it can help edit it, right? It can help flesh it out, maintaining your own tone when you prompt it the right way. So it can become a very, very powerful, at the end stage when you have content, a very, very powerful content repurposing machine, because it's all your own content. It's all in your own voice. And by allowing it to create a social media caption in your voice, or I call this functional content, like, meta title, meta description, podcast description, all these things that we need to create. But we want to spend our time on the content itself, the podcast itself, not all this other meta things that we need. These are areas where AI can really help reduce our time and provide us with quality outputs as well. But that's where I would stop in terms of using AI as is, and only after I've already created the content and it is merely repurposing that. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think as you were talking about LinkedIn kind of having the most potential formats for content possible, there's a real opportunity to use AI to take it from one format and put it into another. If you have a video and you want to write some written content based on what you talk about in that video, it's a great way to repurpose that because you've generated the original content to begin with. I'm with you. I don't ever let AI just create content for me because it's basically already exists. Like somebody's already written that. That's why it's getting generated for me in that way. But I do have a unique perspective on certain topics. So if I can feed that unique perspective in some format, whether it's video, or I do a lot of like walking my dog and doing voice notes, dictation of like my thoughts and my stream of consciousness, and nobody wants to listen to that in its raw form. But it's a great way to kind of, I can articulate myself better verbally than I can writing, whereas other people are better writers than they are orators or whatever that might be. So it's a great way to kind of take one format, repurpose it into a bunch of other formats, but maintain the authenticity of the content that you created to begin with.
Absolutely. I think the way to look at it today, if you were going to outsource content creation, the chances that whoever you outsource it to is going to use AI to begin with are very high. So you almost want to learn how to use custom GPTs, learn how to fine tune them so they sound as close to you as possible. That's where I'd be investing my money and time right now, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Neil. This was such a great conversation. And I feel like we need to have another one in a month after everything on LinkedIn changes again, but we'll be in touch for that.
Sounds
For
like
all
a plan.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today. You can connect with Neil on LinkedIn, where he's actively sharing digital marketing insights on all things social media, etc. Check out his book, Maximizing LinkedIn for Business Growth, on Amazon. And if you're interested in working with Neil, visit his website at neilschaefer.com. Visit growgetter.o for more insights on B2B marketing strategy. And don't forget to subscribe to Marketing Demystified wherever you get your podcast. Also, we'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. Leave us a review, share it with someone who might find it valuable. I'll be back with another episode